Okay, now I will finish everything and all the clips and all my arguments and discussions with this important spiritual point. I am not a spiritual person, and I may have alluded to that. I can't remember now because I have recorded these clips over a few days. I can't remember if I told you before, but I have never been close to the Coptic Church. I have never really revered or held highly these Coptic forefathers, and I wasn't close to the church, as I said, in the first place, until I was in my 20s, in the third decade of my life, and I actually found that every word that had been said about the Coptic Church and the Coptic forefathers was rightly said. But why? It's only because everybody knew the weight of the Coptic forefathers. So for the Coptic Church and for any Coptic person to argue that we want any fast to be shorter, that is actually really unacceptable to me, totally ignored by me. There is no excuse whatsoever to even utter these words, and I have elaborated on that in my written response to our Hegemon Father. Our Hegemon Father, in his thesis, in his original suggestion in the thesis, failed to see that our dates have not changed, and he kept saying that the feast of the apostles will return to the 29th of June. It will not return because it had never moved in the first place. It is still the 29th of June, but in the old Julian calendar, the 12th of July, in the 20th and 21st century, in the new style Gregorian calendar, which will be the 13th of July in the next century, the 14th the century afterwards, and so on and so forth. So he mistakenly claimed that the length of the Apostles' fast will shorten. It will not, but he mistakenly claimed that, saying or taking some reasons that our own children and the newcomers to the Coptic Church actually do suffer with the length of the fast. How could anybody utter these words? Our Coptic Church, as Father Dawood Lamai says, based on all the writings of the forefathers, loves her fasts. There is no other church in the world that has added a whole fast in Jonah's fast when she was embraced by or gripped by the holy zeal from the Syrian church, and added 3 days of Jonah's fast, first degree fast. Not only that, our church also was gripped by holy zeal from the Greek Orthodox, and added 7 days in the beginning of the Great Lent, and called these days the days of preparation, or the preparation week. Not only that, the Nativity fast, or the Christmas fast, in all other churches is known to be 40 days. Our church has added 3 days on top of the 40 days for a phenomenon or a miracle that I had never found or read about or known in any other church or any other community in the world. Such a societal or even such a countrywide miracle in fasting and praying with Anba Abraham Abu Zar'a, and the moving of the Muqattam mountain after they had fasted and prayed Kiryat Eleison for 3 days. So now our Nativity fast is 43 days long, and sometimes it's 44 if the beginning of the fast is a Thursday or a Saturday, coming after the Wednesday or the Friday. Again, I do not mean to preach. I do not mean to set people right, because I am the worst of all. But I am just saying that it is unacceptable to me. Okay? As you can see, it turned a little bit colder here in the UK, and that's why I had to change what I'm wearing. And of course, I'm recording this clip on another day, actually. But just because I started talking about the phenomena, the country-wide phenomena, that God had revered the Coptic Church and the Coptic forefathers with, I would also like to mention this one phenomenon which had happened in the 19th century on the hands of Pope Boutros el-Ghali, or Pope Peter VII. In the 19th century, I think towards the former half or first half of the 19th century. What had happened simply was that the Egyptians, the people in Egypt, not just the Egyptians but also the Turks, were quite worried about drought occurring, because the level of the Nile River had subsided, the level itself, during the time, and it was the time of Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, he was one of the governors, the Turkish governors in Egypt, and he had had a relationship with Pope Peter VII, Pope Peter el-Ghali, Pope Boutros el-Ghali. Heard about him and heard of his miracles before, and even after Muhammad Ali himself, the successor, Muhammad Ali's successor, the next governor, was the one who doubted the presence of the holy light in Jerusalem, and he went with Pope Boutros el-Ghali and the Pope of Rome at the time, who both fasted and prayed, and this governor had seen the holy fire by his own two eyes. But anyway, back to the phenomenon. I'm talking about Pope Boutros el-Ghali and God's reverence to the Coptic forefathers throughout all generations and all ages. So what had happened in that phenomenon that I would like to talk about is the drought that people feared, Egyptians and non-Egyptians, and the governor Muhammad Ali actually started by asking the Muslim rulers, Muslim clerics and Muslim sheikhs to pray, but nothing had happened. And then, as a last resort, he went to Pope Boutros el-Ghali, having some kind of trust in him and belief in him. I'm not obviously stating that it is a Christian belief, because it was not, as far as I'm aware. I don't know, God judges the hearts. But Muhammad Ali had this kind of faith or belief in Pope Boutros el-Ghali, and he asked him to pray for the Nile River, or the River Nile. So what had happened was that Pope Boutros el-Ghali took some of his faithful, of the Christian faithful. They went, I think, to one of the churches in El Maadi, which overbears or just at the bank of the River Nile itself. They prayed a liturgy, and after the liturgy had ended, Pope Boutros el-Ghali and the faithful and the priests and the deacons had washed the vessels of the liturgy in the river Nile, and he threw one of the oblation breads, Corbana, on the river Nile, and what had happened was that the river Nile started overflowing. So there was no drought anymore just because of this. This country-wide phenomenon, not witnessed only by Christians but by everybody, not only Egyptians but also Turkish governors and Turks in general. So may I say, or dare I say, it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just a country-wide phenomenon. And to end this clip and the videos altogether, I would like to mention two last points. The first point is one of the practical points that I should have mentioned earlier, but let me just say it out of interest to those who know the pharaohs and the ancient Egyptians in their sciences. They used to manipulate the orbit of the earth around the sun in such a way that they could define and determine the building of pharaohs' tombs or kings' tombs or kings' thrones. I don't exactly know if it is just the tombs or the thrones or both or more than that, but they used to manipulate the earth's orbit around the sun in such a manner that the sun rays would fall onto the pharaoh's or the king's tomb and or throne twice a year, not just on the day of the king's or the pharaoh's birth, but also on their enthronement. And there were other examples. I think they also used this on the day of their commemoration or death. I think there was more than one example, not just one, but I am sure that there is at the very least one when I used to go to Luxor and Aswan, and I had seen for myself with my own two eyes these tombs or the buildings which the ancient Egyptians had built for that purpose. Let's remember that in those days ancient Egyptians calculated the length of the year to be 365 days. Now our Coptic forefathers, in their genius, they actually inherited this kind of genius and inherited this kind of manipulation after the length of the year had changed to 365 days and a quarter every year. They still were able to manipulate the same phenomenon, and we know of two archaeological churches, or at least one of them is archaeological. I'm not sure about the second, but I won't be surprised if both are archaeological churches. One of them is in Kafr el-Deir, Meni al-Qamh, in El-Sharqiyya Governorate, and the other one is about an hour away or 3/4 of an hour away in Egypt, in another city called Great Sahraj, whereby the sun rays are manipulated to fall onto the altars of the saints in Great Sahraj 3 times a year. One of them is on the 16th of Mesra, the day of the Assumption of the body of Saint Mary, and the 2 other days is the day for the commemoration of Saint George, his martyrdom, on the 23rd of Bermuda, and the other day is the 12th of Baona, which is the day, the feast of Archangel Michael. The latter 2 days are shared by the other church in Kafr el-Deir in Meni al-Qamh in El-Sharqiyya Governorate.